students, let's look at the second theory of learning that is called as operant conditioning. Now, the difference between classical conditioning and operant conditioning is in classical conditioning, learning happens through association and pairing, like we saw. But in operant conditioning, there are two factors that helps in learning. That is reward and punishment. Let's look at the depth of this theory and understand different concepts related to operant conditioning. Now, when we study operant conditioning is learning in which a voluntary response is strengthened or weakened. Now, these two things is very important. Either it is strengthened or it is weakened. Depends on its favorable or unfavorable consequence. So we can understand that learning happens because of consequence. If there is a favorable consequence, we may repeat that action. If it is unfavorable consequence, we may not repeat that action.
The term operant emphasizes the voluntary responses in which an organism performs deliberately to produce a desirable outcome.
Now, the whole theory of operant conditioning came through uh, Thorndike's law effect. Before operant conditioning was formed and it became popularized by B.F. Skinner. We'll be looking at that. This whole concept actually originated from this small experiment from Thorndike. A hungry cat in a cage and a piece of food is placed outside just beyond its reach. Now, what is happening is a cat was placed inside a box, and the food was kept outside the box. And initially, the cat was very impatient. It, started doing whatever it takes to come out of that box. And in that process, what happened was cat's paw fell on a lever, and as soon as that lever was pressed, the door was opened, and the cat came out and had food. Now the experimenter did this again and again, and when experimenter was doing this again and again, the response of pressing the pedal or that lever became more. As soon as the cat was put inside, it will press the lever and it will come out. Slowly, it strengthened the behavior of that cat. Now that's Thorndike's law of effect. Now B.F. Skinner took the same principle and developed into a theory of operant condition. Now, according to B.F. Skinner, a failure is not always a mistake. It may simply be the best one can do under the circumstances. The real mistake is to stop trying. Now, one of the things that B.F. Skinner believed is, our past doesn't matter. Our thoughts and our emotion doesn't matter. But if you have to develop a certain behavior, you need to reinforce it or you need to discourage that. And through consequence, you can turn anyone into any, person in this world. According to B.F. Skinner, he said that, give me a baby, I can make them as a doctor, a lawyer, whatever you want. And B.F. Skinner actually revolutionized the whole concept of education. Now, operant conditioning is also known as instrumental learning. Is the process thereby learned response are controlled by the consequence. Now, that's very important. Learning response is controlled by the consequence. It may be a good consequence or it may be a bad consequence. Now, there are two important processes that is involved in operant conditioning. The first one is reinforcement, and the second one is punishment. Now, let's go little more in depth into what is reinforcement. Now, reinforcement occurs when a response is strengthened by outcome. Okay, so there are two type of reinforcement: negative and positive. So what is happening in reinforcement is the behavior is strengthened because of the consequence. Because the consequence is good, the behavior is strengthened. So whenever you listen to this word reinforcement, just remember that the behavior is strengthened. Now there are two types of reinforcement. The first one is positive reinforcement. Positive reinforcement occurs when a behavior is strengthened by a positive reward. For example, a child behaves well at the shop, so is given a chocolate as reward. Okay, this reinforces a good behavior at the shops or malls. Child does a good behavior, and the mother or father gives a chocolate, when they come home. So they tend to do that behavior again and again because of the good result or consequence that they have got. Negative reinforcement. Negative reinforcement occurs when behavior is strengthened by the removal of a negative stimulus. Now, here in negative reinforcement, something which is unpleasant is removed from the environment. And when that is removed from the environment, there is a good result because something bad has gone away. Something which was unpleasant has gone away from the environment. So automatically the behavior is reinforced. For example, during doing a relaxation exercise when stressed, stress is not good. Stress creates a lot of health issues and problems. Now, when one person does relaxation, what happens is stress is, managed or it reduces. So, because of the reduction in stress and in the physical health, the person tends to do relaxation exercise more and more, and it is reinforced. So, that is negative reinforcement. Now, the second concept is punishment. What is punishment? Punishment occurs when a response to behavior decreases the likelihood of the behavior reoccurring. Now, in reinforcement, behavior is strengthened, but in punishment, behavior is weakened. Now, that is the difference between reinforcement and punishment. Please don't misunderstand. Here, punishment doesn't mean corporal punishment or taking a stick and beating, people. No, that's not is mentioned here. It is mentioned in a complete different psychological manner. Punishment here means the behavior is weakened either through positively or negatively. Now, here also there are two types of punishment: positive punishment and negative punishment. What is positive punishment? Positive punishment occurs when an aversive response to behavior is used and therefore behavior is less likely to occur. That means something which is not good is introduced to the person, and when that is introduced, behavior comes down. For example, if a teenager is riding bike in a very dangerous speed limit, traffic police catches and puts a penalty or maybe suspends the license. Now that is called as positive punishment. Now because of that punishment, that teenager may you know not or may reduce riding above speed limit in future. Okay. Now, what is negative punishment? Negative punishment consists of removal of something pleasant. Now, something is good in the environment, but when that good is taken out, it will stop the individual or person from repeating a certain behavior. Okay, for example, if a child is not studying, so the parent looking at the child interest reduces his favorite cartoon time. Now that is a negative punishment, removal of something pleasant. Now let's go a little bit more in detail. I'll be repeating this again and again so that you can understand what we are looking at. Some of the key concepts, like we said, reinforcement, the process in which a behavior is strengthened and thus more likely to happen again. Okay, because behavior is strengthened, the repetition of behavior will increase. Okay, positive reinforcement, making behavior stronger. Now here behavior is becoming more stronger by following the behavior with a pleasant stimulus. Okay, again, example is given there. A rat presses a lever and receives food. We also might have seen this in dogs performing tricks. After the trick is performed, reward is given to the dogs. So automatically dog will do that behavior again and again. Okay, negative reinforcement, making a behavior stronger by taking away something negative. For example, in the rat presses the lever and turns off the electrical shock. Okay, the first one is presses the lever, receives food. Here, presses the lever and the electrical shock that is there, which is unpleasant, stops. Okay, so automatically behavior to press the lever again and again increases. Now, punishment. What is negative punishment? Negative punishment, reducing a behavior by removal of a pleasant stimulus when behavior occurs. For example, when a teenager is told that she is grounded and will be no longer be able to use family car because of poor grades. For example, something that is given to the child is taken away because of either not behaving in certain way or not studying in certain way. So that is called as negative punishment. Now, what is positive punishment? Reducing a behavior by presenting an unpleasant stimulus when behavior occurs. Now, spanking a child also is example of positive punishment, which I will surely not recommend, because there are many other ways of disciplining a child. Corporal punishment is actually banned in many of the places, including India. So please be careful of spanking the child and creating severe physical and psychological damage. You can actually introduce something which is unpleasant, make it fun. For example, some people will those who get thoughts which irritates them. For example, people those who are dependent on substance like alcohol, whenever that thought of alcohol comes, some people will put a band in their wrist, and whenever that thought comes they will pull it, and that small pinch, that unpleasant experience automatically will stop them from thinking that thought again and again. So that is example of positive punishment. Now here through diagram it is showed what is reinforcement. Reinforcement is increase. Okay, punishment is decrease. So behavior strengthened and behavior weakened. Positive, negative. Okay, now positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement. Okay, in punishment it is positive punishment and negative punishment, which we can see also when it comes to parenting. Okay, when for this is very good for parents. When you introduce, when you add something valuable or desirable, that is positive reinforcement. When you avoid something unpleasant, for example, going to the corner of the room and standing there, a timeout that parents give, that is something unpleasant, so that is positive. Negative reinforcement, adding something unpleasant, for example grounding, and removing something valued or desirable, that is negative punishment.